just a really quick update. I'm not an Eminem Stan, and by the way, I'm sitting at the laundromat because my new job starts tomorrow. And no, it's not at a machine shop because, I'm not a failed rock star. So I can get a better job than that. I'm not some grunt working at a factory for minimum wage. But anyway, Cringeosaurus, and so yeah, I'm not a Stan, an Eminem Stan. I haven't listened to anything of his for over the past 10 years. I enjoyed the Marshall Mathers album, but I'm not even a big Eminem fan anyway. The only reason I brought him up is because you said that specifically mentioned his name and how unfair it was that he gets popular doing a genre of music that anybody could do. So any idiot could just, take 5 minutes and write a rap song and become, successful at it, whatever. Okay, so yeah, I'm not even a big Eminem fan anyway. I prefer, the classics like Big L, Big Pun, MF Doom, the Wu-Tang Clan, stuff like that. But whatever. Okay. So yeah, and also Cringeosaurus says that she gave Stray Whistler an ultimatum. Okay. And for a fact that she thinks that he chose her over booze, but what really happened is he's hiding the fact that he's still an alcoholic, and alcoholics are good at that. They're good at generally hiding their alcohol abuse from people who are close to them. So she hasn't figured that out, even though her family's full. Maybe the reason she hasn't figured it out is because there was no stigma attached to being an alcoholic in her family, since everybody was just a fucking degenerate anyway, so there was no reason to hide anything. So maybe she hasn't figured that out yet. She's going to eventually, and it's going to hit hard, because when she figures it out, she'll be, she'll have hit the wall at that point, because she just turned 40. Once you start to hit the wall, it's like the crash test dummy. You go forward, and then it's just all what you. Once the crash test dummy starts moving forward, it gets uglier and uglier every second. And so she's an idiot, and Stray Whistler should have fucking listened to me. I tried to warn him about her, but he didn't want to listen to me. So the two of them deserve each other. Anyway, that's all I had to say. I think my clothes are done now. So.
Wah. Nobody in the music industry worked harder than I did. Nobody was more motivated than me. But do you see my albums in record stores? No, you see Eminem, who was a little punk, white suburban spoiled rich kid, and he never had to work a day in his life, never had to work hard, and for some reason he gets all the success. Wah, the mafia sabotaged my career. Wah. Oh, I never said that Eminem wasn't talented or didn't deserve his success. I never said anything bad about Eminem. I said he was talented, and he does a certain style of rap, and the rap style that he does is a style of rap that's a particular style. I never said any of that stuff. Come on. Rap music is crap. Eminem does crap music. And everybody knows that rap music requires no talent, and it's something that anybody could do. And yes, it's true, some rap is slightly better than other rap, but at the end of the day, it's all crap. I never said that Eminem wasn't talented or didn't deserve a success. I never said anything like that. What are you talking about? Where do you get this shit?
I realized I've been going about this all wrong. And I was trying to inductively reason my way to Quinka's place of employment, because he's doxed me. So if he doxed me, then it's okay to dox him back. It's a little tit for tat thing. Right? You do something to someone, they might do it back to you. Only fair, right? And I was thinking for a long time about this, and cross-referencing things on Google and Google Maps, and looking at Street View on Google Maps, trying to match the car to the place. But then it occurred to me that thinking is for the gloopy ones, and that the omni ones use like inspiration in what Bog sends. Okay, so I closed my eyes and cleared my mind of everything, and I saw a vision, and the vision in my head had those signs on the side of churches and on fast food restaurants that have letters. I saw that, and it said, luck runs out, safety is for life. And I stared at that in my mental, in my Cartesian theater. I just stared at it with my eyes closed. And I stared at that mentally. I stared at it for a good 45 minutes. And then the name came to me. I heard a voice. It said, SMS group 15200 Huron Street, Taylor, Michigan. This is going to be a quick video about psychology, and I'm going to use Cringeosaurus to illustrate my point, but it really applies in general. So this is not a video about Cringeosaurus or anything like that. This is about psychology and human nature. So Cringeosaurus says that she gave Stray Whistler, her non-husband Stray Whistler, an ultimatum. It was either her or the booze, and he chose her for some reason. I don't really get it. But I think Cringeosaurus is being naive. Right now, I am an alcoholic. I don't drink anymore. And Cringeosaurus uses language like, I used to be an alcoholic. And you see, that's her first mistake. You use language like that, it means you don't really understand addiction. So, to me, that would clue me in. For me, I take that as a hint that she really is naive about psychology and about addiction. And I don't think that she was ever really a full-blown alcoholic. She used to get blackout drunk, yes. Is she an alcoholic per the medical definition? Well, I mean, I don't know. They keep changing the definition, so it's a sliding scale. I think medically, yes, but she's not. She doesn't have an addictive personality. So, Stray Whistler, on the other hand, probably does. And, she says that he gave up alcohol. I don't believe that. I think that in his case, it's a lot easier to pretend to give up alcohol than it is to give up alcohol. So I don't think that he actually did that. And I think she's going to be in for a rude awakening. A very rude awakening. Maybe it might last for, it might go on for a couple of years, maybe longer, but eventually it will happen. She will discover that he did not quit. Right? And she also complains that she has no one in her life to watch her back. And this is something she complains about. Now, does she watch out for other people? Does she take care of other people and look out for them and their best interests? I don't know. I don't know her well enough to make that determination, but she complains about this problem she has where nobody is in her life who can help her. And the reason for that is because if people say stuff that she doesn't like, she, attacks the messenger. She kills the messenger. So that's something you need to be concerned with if you want to surround yourself with people who are looking out for you, every once in a while you're going to have to deal with the fact that some of the time someone's going to mention the truth and you are going to go after them. You know, like a little attack dog. And you're going to alienate people. And they're not going to want to look out for you. And this is especially true if you are constantly doing that to other people. So you're constantly going out of your way to tell the truth to other people. That kind of exchange needs to be reciprocal. Okay, so that's something you need to work on. Friendships and relationships are reciprocal in nature. Okay, they're not one-sided. Okay, like the relationship you have with your children is one-sided. Other relationship, relationships you have with close family can be one-sided. But that doesn't work outside of that little circle.
Oh. And by the way, when I say that I'm starting a new job, I'm starting it over again after, vacation. The same job I've had for 7 fucking years. Retard. So I thought I'd point that out. All right, just a really quick update. I'm not an Eminem Stan. And by the way, I'm sitting at the laundromat because my new job starts tomorrow. And no, it's not at a machine shop because, I'm not a failed rock star. So I can get a better job than that. I'm not some grunt working at a factory for minimum wage. But anyway, Cringeosaurus, and so yeah, I'm not a Stan, an Eminem Stan. I haven't listened to anything of his for over the past 10 years. I enjoyed the Marshall Mathers album. But I'm not even a big Eminem fan anyway. The only reason I brought him up is because you said that, specifically mentioned his name and how unfair it was that he gets popular doing a genre of music that anybody could do. So any idiot could just, take 5 minutes and write a rap song and become, successful at it, whatever. Okay, so yeah, I'm not even a big Eminem fan anyway. I prefer, classics like Big L, Big Pun, MF Doom, the Wu-Tang Clan, stuff like that. But whatever. Okay. So yeah, and also Cringeosaurus says that she gave Stray Whistler an ultimatum. Okay. And I know for a fact that she thinks that he chose her over booze, but what really happened is he's hiding the fact that he's still an alcoholic. And alcoholics are good at that. They're good at generally hiding their alcohol abuse from people who are close to them. So she hasn't figured that out, even though her family's full. Maybe the reason she hasn't figured it out is because there was no stigma attached to being an alcoholic in her family, since everybody was just a fucking degenerate anyway, so there was no reason to hide anything. So maybe she hasn't figured that out yet. She's going to eventually, and it's going to hit hard, because when she figures it out, she'll be, she'll have hit the wall at that point, because she just turned 40. Once you start to hit the wall, it's like the crash test dummy. You go forward, and then it's just all once the crash test dummy starts moving forward, it gets uglier and uglier every second. And so she's an idiot. And Stray Whistler should have fucking listened to me. I tried to warn him about her, but he didn't want to listen to me. So the two of them deserve each other. Anyway, that's all I had to say. I think my clothes are done now. So what's weird is that my brother actually wants to become a rapper, and I've actually I made beats for his rap songs, and so I would know it. Creating a beat for a rap song, even that just by itself requires probably about as much talent as it takes to play like 3 chords on a guitar in a rock band. I'm just saying. And I play guitar too, so I can if I compare the two things, they're basically this. Like I mean, just playing 3 chords on a guitar is the same as producing a rap beat in terms of like talent level, skill level, difficulty, and all that stuff. It's basically the same thing. Playing keyboard is easier than playing guitar for me, because I took piano lessons. Maybe if you never took piano lessons, you have a different perspective. But if you were a child and you learned how to play piano, especially classical piano, then everything that you do in a rock band with a synthesizer is like 1/100th the difficulty level, because it's just playing chords and scales.
Oh, and another thing, there's nothing wrong with being mediocre. If you just want to play in your band, and even if it's a mediocre band, there's nothing wrong with that. And you probably had parents that never taught you. Your daddy probably never taught you that, even if you're great at something, there's always going to be somebody better than you at it. And there's always going to be people who are worse than you at it. So, you should just compare yourself to, who you were yesterday and not worry too much about, how good you are compared to, say, Eminem. Because Eminem is sort of a freak of nature, and you're not. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because if everybody was Eminem, then there would be nobody to clean toilets at Steel Tool Engineering. So I'm not saying don't get the idea, don't get me wrong, is what I'm saying. There's an interesting story I heard. I don't know if it's true, but apparently Les Paul, before he took up guitar, was a piano player, a jazz pianist, and then he heard Art Tatum play piano, and then he at that moment he gave up piano. So yeah, if you're not, imagine if he had been bitter and resented Art Tatum, said, spent his whole life being bitter and saying, jazz piano is so, last year, and it doesn't require any talent, and guitar playing, that's real music. Imagine what kind of schmuck would do that, So I guess you could say I was inspired to read the Wikipedia article on Eminem, aka Marshall Mathers, because I never, I like to read biographies of artists, not just rap artists, but any artist or musician that I'm interested in. But for whatever reason, I never read about Eminem's childhood or his biography, because, as I mentioned before, I used to listen to Eminem a long time ago, back when he was cool, I guess you could say, but I haven't really looked into his music recently, so he hasn't really been on my radar. So for whatever reason, I never really read up on his actual biography. I mean, I did watch the movie 8 Mile, so I knew the fictionalized version of his story. That he worked in a steel mill in high school or whatever, and lived with his mother, and then he got signed to a rap label with Dr. Dre, and that's what I knew about the fictionalized version of his story. So, if somebody said to me, actually Eminem grew up rich, in a rich neighborhood with a rich mother who spoiled him, and he never grew up he never had to live on the streets, or he never had to face any hardships in his life, I would probably believe it, or it wouldn't strain credulity at all. Okay.
So, but reading up on his story, nothing could be further from the truth. So we're just going to read this. So this is from Wikipedia. Marshall Bruce Mathers III was born October 17, 1972 in St. Joseph, Missouri. The only child of Marshall Bruce Mathers Jr. and Deborah Ray Debbie Nelson. His mother nearly died during her 73-hour labor with him. Eminem's parents were in a band called Daddy Warbucks, playing in Ramada Inns along the Dakotas-Montana border before they separated. His father abandoned his family when Eminem was a year and a half old, and Eminem was raised only by his mother in poverty. He wrote letters to his father, but Debbie said that they always came back marked "Return to Sender." His mother later had a son named Nathan Kane Samara. By the age of 12, Eminem and his mother shuttled between states, rarely staying in one house for more than a year or two, and mostly living with family members, moving several times, and lived in St. Joseph, Savannah, Missouri, Kansas City, Warren, Michigan, and Roseville, Michigan, before settling in Detroit. So maybe that was when he moved to Rochester Hills, and moved into a mansion, right, with his mother. So for much of his youth, Eminem and his mother lived in a working class, primarily black Detroit neighborhood. So is that Rochester Hills? I don't know. He and Debbie were one of three white households on their block, and Eminem was beaten several times by youths in the area, black youths. Eminem frequently fought with his mother, whom a social worker described as having a paranoid personality. And when he was a child, a bully severely injured Eminem's head in an assault, which Eminem recounted with comic exaggeration on the song Brain Damage. Debbie filed a lawsuit against the public school for this in 1982. This suit was dismissed by a Michigan judge who said the school was immune from lawsuits. Eminem was interested in storytelling, aspiring to be a comic book artist before discovering rap. He heard his first rap song, Reckless, featuring Ice-T, on the Breakin' soundtrack, a gift from Debbie's half-brother, Ronnie Polkingham. His uncle was close to the boy and later became a musical mentor to him. When Polkingham committed suicide in 1991, Eminem stopped speaking publicly for days and did not attend his funeral. At age 14, Eminem began rapping with high school friend Mike Ruby. And Eminem snuck into neighboring Osborne High School with friend and fellow rapper Proof for lunchroom freestyle rap battles. On Saturdays, they attended open mic contests at the Hip Hop Shop on West 7 Mile Road, considered ground zero for the Detroit rap scene. Struggling to succeed in a predominantly black industry, Eminem was appreciated by underground hip-hop audiences. When he wrote verses, he wanted most of the words to rhyme. He wrote long words or phrases on paper and underneath worked on rhymes for each syllable. Although the words often made little sense, the drill helped Eminem practice sounds and rhymes. In 1987, Debbie allowed runaway Kimberly Ann Scott to stay at their home. Several years later, Eminem began an on and off relationship with Scott. After spending 3 years in 9th grade due to truancy and poor grades, he dropped out of Lincoln High School at age 17. Although interested in English, Eminem never explored literature, preferring comic books, and he disliked math and social studies. Eminem worked at several jobs to help his mother pay the bills, one of which was at Little Caesars Pizza in Warren. He later said she often threw him out of the house anyway, often taking most of his paycheck. when she left to play bingo, he would blast the stereo and write songs. And then the Wikipedia article goes on to recount his meteoric rise to success after he was spotted by an intern working for Dr. Dre. He took the tape of Eminem's rap battle. He went to LA, flew to LA to participate in a rap battle, and came in second place. And that's where the intern discovered him, gave the tape to Dr. Dre, and Dr. Dre signed him. Yeah.
I'm not an Eminem Stan. And by the way, I'm sitting at the laundromat because my new job starts tomorrow. And no, it's not at a machine shop because, I'm not a failed rock star.
We're going to do a live it's not live because I'm not going to stream this. I'm going to record it. But this is a cold watch of Forest Ash's Motivational Creature Sunday live stream. I'm talking softly because it's the middle of the night, 1:30, and I don't want to talk loud because people have to get up in the morning, go to work. I'm probably the only person in this entire building who doesn't have to get up in the morning, but I'm also probably one of the few people who makes more than $50 an hour at their job. So kind of balances out in a weird way.
Hello. I don't know why it wouldn't let me turn it horizontal this time, but this is where we're at.
Because the algorithm correctly identified you as Didla. Because only Didlas do vertical streams, remember?
I wanted to make a short, tiny Sunday live that I could leave up and not immediately delete because it's not cringy and weird, and I don't feel the need to have to get drunk every time that I stream to put on some sort of clown show. That's only every once in a while, and to be quite honest, I didn't even really enjoy it.
She looks much, much prettier without all the clown makeup. Speaking of clowns, when she was younger, she used to put on so much fucking makeup. She looked like a fucking Bozo the Clown. It's just, I don't know why women do that. Stupid.
My birthday, I did enjoy the conversation that I had on my birthday, but I didn't enjoy
the conversation. Who did you have a conversation with? Let's see. Well, you had a short conversation with Crackadonna at the end. And most of it, but that was just 30 minutes out of a 4-hour live stream. Most of the time you were talking to the alternative hypothesis. Now, I didn't know Ryan Falk follows Cringeosaurus, but I'm glad that you and him and Ryan Falk got along. So
it probably won't be repeated.
You're welcome.
For the foreseeable future. Just so we know, I'm not going to burn any sage this time. My house is already cleaned. I'm not going to... The blessings come from within. I don't need to bless anybody. The blessings come from within. So...
If it's going to be this hippy-dippy nonsense this entire stream, I'm not...
Do a little short evening stream, and then I'll go fuck off and watch some ghost stories. Because it's almost fall, and it's time to watch ghost stories and get creeped out. So anyways, probably didn't turn off my, let's turn off my little buzzy thing, so it's not buzzy when I'm talking. Anyways, okay. The first thing I wanted to say, which is hard for me to remember myself sometimes, is if you enjoy creating content, then that's the reward. And doing something that you enjoy is your own reward for doing it. You shouldn't expect another reward. I get sad when
This doesn't have a live chat replay, so I don't even know what's going on in the chat.
Anyway,
But she's checking to see if Jade, because I'm smart, I can figure stuff out without seeing the chat. She's trying to determine whether that's the real JP or an alt, because JP apparently is not modded on her channel.
doing something that you enjoy is your own reward for doing it. You should
She's surprised that JP is not modded.
expect another reward. I get sad when hold on. You're unmodded. Anyway,
I don't even understand. All you have to do is go visit their channel. I guess maybe when she's streaming, it can't do that.
I understand that for people that are trying to make money off of it, it gets annoying when people don't donate. I get that, but if you actually just enjoy what you're doing, then that should be the reward for it. If you're good at doing it, if you're good at getting up and talking to people, or being a clown for other people to enjoy, that's its own reward, right? So, Jeremy, if that's legitimately you, if you could text me, and tell me that's actually you, because you're not modded. I don't think it doesn't show that you're modded in the stream.
I guessed it correctly. See. Now you might ask, how did I figure that out? Because
Anyway, there's a lot of people.
I didn't watch this ahead of time. I know you fucking jagoffs are sitting there going, oh, you watched this already. You probably watched it live. It's probably your fake account.
People that try to force other people off streaming.
It's probably your fake account. You're just building
Just like,
I know what you're thinking.
bully them off of streaming. You need to get off the internet. No, if somebody enjoys streaming, they don't have to get off the internet. They can do whatever they want. And somebody else being
Oh, okay, okay.
miserable and not having the courage to stream themselves and being salty over it should not push anybody off of doing what they enjoy. You should just do it anyway. There's always going to be people that are miserable with their own selves, miserable with their lives, ashamed of themselves, unwilling to be themselves, that are going to just try to leech and make your content their content because they have no content. Okay, all right, Jeremy, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to address some jackass who left some community posts in their community tab on YouTube. So Quinca seems to believe that I don't understand how AI works because he brings up something called the frame problem. He doesn't use that term explicitly, but because he's kind of uneducated and he doesn't really, he's never studied artificial intelligence or cognitive science, so he doesn't understand the terminology. So he can only think in terms of pop culture references. So he is posting links to clips from the movie The Fly from the 80s. That was from, 1986, Jeff Goldblum. In the movie, Jeff Goldblum plays a scientist who is attempting to develop a teleportation device, and he runs into a snag because he's unable to teleport living beings. He can teleport inanimate objects just fine, like a book or a coffee table or a coffee mug or something like that. He can teleport that. But he cannot teleport a baboon, for instance. If he tries to teleport a baboon, it comes out as a deformed, cancerous blob that's oozing blood and pus, and it's kind of disgusting. And so the solution that he comes up with is it's not really explained in the movie how he solves the problem, but it's implied, or you can infer that it has something to do with with identifying biological organisms with their DNA and treating the total DNA strand as a biological whole. But in the movie, there's a problem with that because when he teleports himself, there's a fly in the teleportation device as well, and the computer is capable of distinguishing between these two biological organisms. So at the very least, this computer is smarter than Ted Marcotte because the computer is capable of distinguishing between two separate consciousnesses and saying they're two. It's able to count to two
right? As opposed to Ted Marcotte, who thinks that conjoined twins are one person. George Bush. He doesn't know the difference between one person and two people. Even if they're just even if they conjoined twins just share if they're just conjoined at if the tip of their pinky their two pinkies were conjoined and nothing else was conjoined, he would still treat that as one person. And he makes no argument for why you should do that, other than just to say it's obvious. And then he cites a ChatGPT generated answer to buttress his argument, which is also retarded. But anyway, what the problem that the computer had is that Seth Brundle, the character in the movie, never completed the decision tree for the possibility, or for the I can't think today. I'm really contingency that there are two biological organisms in the teleportation device at the same time. So the computer doesn't know what to do because it was never told what to do in this scenario. Ted Marcotte thinks that AI works according to classical logic or maybe modal logic. Of course, modern AI uses convolutional neural networks and backpropagation, which is a totally different thing. That's actually backpropagation and convolutional neural networks are actually AI's solution to the frame problem. The frame problem is kind of difficult to explain, but let's take a simple scenario. Let's say that you have a door and you have a light bulb. And these two things have two states. Well, the door can be open or it can be closed. So it has two states, open, closed. And the light has two states. It's either on or it's off. Now, if you were programming a classical computer to, if let's say you're programming a robot, and if you tell the robot to close the door, it will go over and close the door. If you tell the robot to turn the light off, it will turn the light off. If you are programming that robot, you have to define variables for each of these objects. You have to define the variable door, or the state of the door, which is a variable in the system, and it has two states, on or open or closed. And you have to define a variable for light. The light is either on or off. And if you tell the robot to close the door, it will perform an action which will result in the changing of the state of the door from open to closed. And the framing problem is that you have to assume it in first order predicate logic. You have to take as an axiom that changing the state of one variable does not change the state of any other variable. Now, you could just define that as an axiom, right? But that becomes difficult when you have a complex physical environment that a robot tends to operate in. So for example, you might have a more complicated task, like so in the simple scenario, if the robot closes the door, the robot will take as an axiom that the light is the state of the light doesn't change. So if you close the door, the light is still on if it was on before. If it was off, it's still off. So if you go to tell the robot to turn the light on, it will do so. And when it does that, it knows that the state of the door doesn't change, right? But if you're in a complex physical environment, you can't just assume that, because let's say, for example, you're lifting. Let's say you have a tray with a bunch of items on it, there's a coffee cup and a donut and maybe a grapefruit. And you tell the robot, pick the tray up and carry it to me. The robot It has variables, state variables for each of these objects. And it will pick the tray up, carry it over. But how does the robot know that all of the objects that are on the tray are being carried with the tray? Because the axiom is that the state doesn't change. Just because you change the state of one thing doesn't, all the states of all the other variables have to remain unchanged. But in the real world, that doesn't happen. All of those objects are carried with the tray. So you have to make a new axiom. You have to define an axiom that says when things are sitting on another thing, the state doesn't change. But then you also have the problem with if you pick the tray up and carry it and move it too fast, the coffee's going to spill out, and so you need to say the variable for the amount of coffee in the cup, in the coffee mug, has to decrease. Well, you need an axiom that says when this takes place, when you move the coffee cup too fast. And so it becomes insanely complicated. And this was, in the past, this was a significant problem for AI and computer science. Now, of course, with universal function approximation methods like convolutional neural networks, that's all been solved. That's why we have computers that can take a simple input like, draw me a picture of a dog on a boat, sitting in a boat with a fisherman fishing, and it will create an image that is more or less what you're thinking of, because it doesn't use logic gates the way that classical algorithms use them. It uses a convolutional neural network. So that's something you just don't fucking understand. You're just stupid as fuck. You're just a dumbass, dude. Like, you made a lot of bad decisions in your life, and we're seeing the results of that right now in your behavior online. Yourself. I don't like you. No one likes you. Have you noticed that? Not very many people like you. At least not on the internet. So yeah, that's my answer. Go fuck. Let me ask you this question. What was the point of my thought experiment? What precisely was it that I was illustrating with my thought experiment? What I was illustrating is that a prog rock album that is overly derivative and borrows riffs from other better albums and better songs and better musicians, and has uninspired, repetitive lyrics, requires very little creativity and very little talent to produce. That was the point. Well, I mean, I should say very little creativity and very little talent relative to Eminem. So Eminem's success is deserved, and your lack of success is also deserved. That was the point. That was the whole bloody point